Monster Hunter Wilds might be harder than we think. Now, this video just came out 6 days ago, struck by fluency. Let's give it a watch.
With the new footage from the latest trailer, I'm starting to have a sneaking suspicion that Wilds will be harder and more challenging than we're expecting.
I think it will be too.
In late 2024, difficulty...
I mean, just showing the elements of what's happening. The monster splashes up the water. Now you have to deal with the water. You have to dodge the water. But you're getting destroyed by the monster because the water is their element. They're faster. They're stronger. Just like in the last video that we just watched by Ninx. We just saw how when the big, I can't remember its name, the big ugly fish, whatever, the Leviathan thing was in the water, he coated its body. And whenever you hit it, it kind of absorbed it because, you know, it was just in its element. Now, taking it out of its element, you can probably, you know, change how the fight goes. So I think just with that alone, it's going to be pretty challenging.
That has been broken down into its nuances time and time again. This has only been exacerbated by Monster Hunter's ballooning into success post-World, becoming a top dog in the industry for Capcom.
Huge.
The classic debate of, are the games getting easier or are we as players just getting better, is one that goes back to much earlier entries in the series than the upcoming Wilds.
Oh yeah,
it's not a very simple discussion, as difficulty in Monster Hunter is composed of multiple factors, mainly the following: a player's choice of weapon, their skill and knowledge of the game, and which monster they're actually hunting.
Right.
All of which have a large...
I mean, if you master your weapon, you're going to be much better at the hunt. If you practice on a monster over and over and over and over and over, you're going to be able to destroy them a lot easier. I mean, look at all these speedrunners out here who can beat monsters in like a minute or 5 minutes in World, right? Because World's a little bit longer sometimes. But it does get a little bit easier with the more practice that you get. So it is cool that, you know, Wilds is changing that up.
A variability, which highlights a key factor about difficulty when it comes to Monster Hunter. As new players join in on the hunt, there's quite a bit for them to get used to, even if they may have experience with other action games. Us fans of Monster Hunter are already keenly aware of and come to love the quirks that Monster Hunter has to offer. Monster Hunter World streamlined a lot of these quirks through various system and gameplay changes, both of which are now the new normal, new world experience when it comes to playing these games. However, some haven't taken a liking to these changes either in World or in Rise. But
I personally love the changes, and I love all the things that they've implemented from previous games, current games, and their bigger games and their older games. It seems like they're just adding things from everything. So when you have something like World and Rise where they play extremely different, they're not even close to the same game as far as like fighting styles and whatever, but you get to see and experience a different way of fighting that's like, oh crap, that's really cool. And now that whenever they drop things like that, they can see, oh, people really like this element from this current game, and then people like the element from this other older game. Why don't we combine the two and see what happens with that, right? I think it's cool.
The thriving success that Monster Hunter has experienced after this streamlining occurred is undeniable. The aptly named Old Guard of Monster Hunter now has minuscule numbers compared to the player base as a whole. Just as many players, if not more, have New World Monster Hunter as their only experiences within the series, and it's time for another evolution into the Wilds. In my opinion, there's plenty to be excited about if you are a fan of Monster Hunter, regardless of when you accepted your first quest. And for context, my first introduction to Monster Hunter was the demo of 3 Ultimate on the Wii U, but I didn't truly get hooked until Generations.
That's me too, man. I got hooked on Try.
So the question is, how is Wilds going to develop the...
I just really liked the underwater fighting. It was just so fun. It was so cool. I don't think it's something that they're going to bring back, maybe not soon, but I want them to. Maybe I'm crazy, but I would like to see it again.
Most important aspect of Monster Hunter is gameplay and combat. There's been some key moments in footage of Wilds that have raised eyebrows in regards to how easy or hard the game could be. I'm going to start with what sparked my vision for this video. One of 3 new monsters showcased in the release date trailer, Uth Duna. Uth Duna is a new Leviathan-type monster and is the apex of the Scarlet Forest.
I need to remember that name.
Not that kind of apex. Apex as in top of the food chain. We can just get that out of here. And while we're here...
Apex Azaros, though. When you first run into Apex Azaros, he gave you those hands. He gave you those hands. We were all not ready for that. We were just like, oh, it's just a little Azaros. It's not a big deal. And he smacked the shit out of you.
Does anyone else see a resemblance to the Gaping Dragon from Dark Souls 1? Man's got the floppy vibe going on. Let's take note of how large Uth Duna is.
Huge.
It could just be a perspective thing.
Absolutely
and they
humongous.
Recorded this with camera settings set fairly low, but Uth Duna looks massive. For a monster his size, his speed immediately caught my attention. World had some hefty, speedy monsters as well, both new and returning. Tigrex, Nargacuga, and Barioth come to mind. But a Leviathan? The fastest Leviathans that I can remember are...
Legiacrest, yeah. And Ivory Legiacrest was crazy.
But Uth Duna's...
Nah, don't move on. We need Legiacrest back in the game. And actually, I think it's going to happen in Wilds. I believe it's going to happen because, I mean, I think they're going to get to their point of talking about how, like when you're fighting the last monster that they showed, I already forgot his name, Uth, whatever. Whenever it's in the water, the fight is completely different. They use that water to their advantage. They move through it and whatnot. So something like that with Legiacrest involved would be crazy. And I feel like they're going to add Legiacrest.
Size, it made me realize that maybe there's a reason why there's already been a noticeable shift in combat within Wilds. Animation cancels are starting to make their way into the series, which is definitely a big deal, as Monster Hunter has typically been a game about understanding animations of your own attacks, the monster's attacks, and maximizing the commitment levels of your attacks to properly punish openings against monsters.
Absolutely.
It looks like this is changing, and to a decent degree as well. Dual Blades can now cancel out of Demon Dance. Charge Blade will have an easier time aiming guard point AEDs, and Gunlance is able to cancel moves, including sheathing, into a guard.
Yep.
And then there's everyone's favorite weapon that never, ever causes any drama within the community, Longsword. Longsword can do some crazy stuff.
Love the sarcasm.
Out of Helm Splitter mid-air.
Love the sarcasm.
Also, you can apparently cancel Spirit Slashes into a Foresight Slash. The demo is going to answer a lot of important questions.
It will.
To be fair,
and I can't wait.
Landing a Helm Splitter while at red gauge will spend 2 levels of gauge instead of the usual 1 and put you in white gauge. But all of these changes to weapons, allowing the player to have unusual amounts of maneuverability in Monster Hunter. Why? This will directly impact how threatening monsters are, and allow players to have an easier time exploiting monster patterns. So, unless Capcom is totally dropping the ball, and just squandering their second most successful series ever, there can only be one, albeit open-ended answer to that question. An increase in difficulty, which is exactly why I think Capcom is making it so that players have much more control over their movement in combat. It's not much to go off of yet, but I think the amount of challenge in Wilds as a base game is going to way surpass what was on offer with World and certainly Rise. What about the new offset and clash attacks? Allowing most weapons access to a parry or hyper armor?
All it takes.
Capcom was absolutely experimenting with this in Rise and Sunbreak,
right,
in which every weapon has a counter or access to invincibility frames outside of rolling. Beyond that, though...
And this is exactly what I meant when I said what I said previously, right? If you don't have those experiment games, you're not going to realize the potential of what you can potentially make.
Something else that I think people don't often...
And the counters to the Switch Axe was just by far the most amazing thing that Switch Axe could get.
Remember, whenever we get into the pre-release cycle of an upcoming Monster Hunter game, people seem to forget what it was like playing older Monster Hunter games.
Oh
I don't
God,
even mean playing through your first ever Monster
terrible.
Hunter. That will always be a good experience of difficulty brought on by learning.
My first Monster Hunter game was Monster Hunter Try. And when I mean terrible, I don't mean the game itself or the hunting itself because the hunting's fun. But I mean, like, in order to make a net, you had to find materials for it. And then there are three types of nets that you had to make. The nets could break. So when you're trying to get bugs and farm stuff like that, or fish, you also had to farm the materials to make the things that you're going to be using to catch those things. It was extremely annoying. And I'm very glad that they added that you could just use your net all you want, or use a fishing rod all you want, and it didn't break, so you don't have to craft materials to do it again. You don't have to paintball the monster, because if you don't paintball the monster and they leave, you may not know where they go. And I get that the experience of that was fun in that time being, but seeing it evolve from that into what it is now, I think it's on a much better path, just me personally speaking myself.
Learning the game systems and combat. But think back to World's initial launch. Does anyone else remember how much of a wall that Anjanath was for a lot of players? Even Monster Hunter veterans at the time could have had issues dealing with Anjanath.
Literally everybody.
They weren't just fighting a new monster. They were fighting a new game. The movement and combat in World was vastly different for both hunters and monsters alike. It takes time to properly adjust to combat in a new Monster Hunter game.
Yeah, it wasn't as fast as Rise.
The most changes to the series to date.
It did.
I believe that Wilds is going to be a similar experience with even more changes thrown in.
I agree.
Will Monster Hunter Wilds be too easy? I don't think so. I think Capcom has something up their sleeve and are taking notes from certain other games that play rather similarly to Monster Hunter. Challenge is clearly a good incentive to keep players invested, and more importantly, makes players willing to adapt to new environments, new monsters, new weapon changes, and a brand new Monster Hunter.
And one thing that I like about this is, obviously we don't have our hands on a demo. I mean, some people have played the game, but just as a viewer, it seems like it's much faster than the pace of Worlds, but much slower than the pace of Rise, which I think is like the perfect balance. And it seems like when you're hunting these monsters, the movements of your character are so like meticulous. So I think that's going to play like a major role in the gameplay.
It's hard to put into words how excited I am about Wilds. I've realized that Monster Hunter is a series that I've loved since 2016, and it's easy to feel the passion that the developers have for this series.
Yep.
Even the most recent trailer has me thrilled to see what Ryozo, the directors, and the team have put together.
I'm so damn excited too.
The new monsters all have this feral feel to them, with very strong vibes of Monster Hunter Frontier, and although I haven't played Frontier, I'm all for that. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and joining me on my journey to Wilds. If you'd like to hop in the caravan with me, consider subscribing. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Done. This video was phenomenal. Struck by Fluency, thank you for the pure entertainment. Beautifully done, well written, everything was great. This was a solid video. Guys, make sure you sub to Struck by Fluency. I will have the videos of this one and the one by Nix previously linked down in the comments below on both of the videos. Wow, that was incredible. Thank you for that. We'll give that a thumbs up too. And now it is time to play some Monster Hunter World on PC.